Oh, here I am.
All right, good morning, gentlemen.
Okay.
We left off at the bottom of Kuf Mem Hey Amud Beis.
Oh,
A couple lines from the bottom. I think last skinny line.
Kuf Mem Hey
Kuf
Amud.
Mem Hey Amud Beis.
Oh, okay, I'm getting there. I got it.
So welcome to our guests and the thousands of people joining us online. So you say we're darshing the pasuk, a couple more drushes of the pasuk. We just ran out of time yesterday, needed another 90 seconds. But Rabbi Chanina Omar, Kol Yimei Ani Raim. So we're still darshing that pasuk from Mishlei. So it says, right, all the days of poverty are bad, and V'tov Lev Mishta Tamid, right? That was the pasuk. So he says, so Amar, so Rabbi Chanina Omar, Kol Yimei Ani Raim Zeh Sheish Leisha Ra. That's a person. All his days are bad when he has a bad wife. V'tov Lev Mishta Tamid, right? And a good heart and a constant, and happiness. That person has a good wife. That's a person who's very particular. Everything bothers him, so he's always having a bad day. And a person, does not get as frazzled. So Rachman, that's a person who has Rachmanis and everybody. He feels everyone's pain, so he's always worrying. And that's a person who doesn't take everything to heart, and therefore he's not upset. Right, so over here means he's right. How's it tell you? Other people's needs don't upset him. Yeah. That's a person who's short-tempered. A person who's very, mellow, right? And nothing it doesn't get to him. Understand? All days are bad. All times are bad. What about Shabbos and Yontif? So our answer is Shmuel, right? When you begin to change your schedule, that's when you begin to have, with different diseases or sicknesses, because you've changed your routine. So therefore, yes, even Shabbos Yantif could also have, some negative effects. Exactly. Thank you. Sefer Ben Sira. It says there in Sefer Ben Sira, Kol Yimei Ani Raim. So it says over there, all the days of Ani Raim. So Ben Sira, Af Leila, it's not just days, but even nights. So V'shava Gagim Gago. So let's say his roof, right? How do you have a bad night? You're sleeping. So let's say his roof is below the roof of his friends, and their rain, flows off onto his roof and causes more leaking in his house. And Baruma Harim Karo, his vineyards at the bottom of the hills of the mountains, and therefore when it goes downhill, so then his vineyards wash off into the vineyards below him, and therefore his vineyard gets washed out even in the evening. So therefore his nights are also not good. Fine. Naya Mishnah. Mishnah says Hashaleach Sivlonos Lebescham. A person goes ahead and sends gifts to his kala. Right, so he sends it to her father's house where she's presiding until he finishes off the Nisuin, and he sends it to her. So Shalach Sham Meya Mana. Let's say he even sends her lavish gifts, 100 mana. V'achal Sham Sudas Chasen, and then he was invited there. Sudas Chasen. So he goes to Sudas Chasen. Afilu b'dinar, even if he only eats a dinar's worth and he gave 100, he cannot go ahead and collect. In other words, since this hana, his benefit, this happiness of being invited as a guest in the house, it's like he was Michael, any sort of a return of such gifts. And look, it's basically if the wedding does not happen and all of a sudden, he wants the stuff back, we'll soon see who is the one who backed out.
Engagement ring, so it's cool.
Right, but over here, these are stivloinos, right? These are gifts, right? He sends, for Shabbos, he sends flowers, or that's is one thing, or he sends clothing that lasts, or he sends, so it depends. We'll soon see what type of product. If it's something that is a what's it called, that expires or not, perishable. Thank you.
Good word.
I was thinking of that.
It's huge.
Consumable.
After Shashras and Moshe Rabbah, right? You gotta only clean up the perishables. So I feel but let's say he was not invited to Sudas Kasan. His future father-in-law wanted nothing to do with him, and the shidduch is over. Arei elo nigbay. So these can be collected. These gifts, these bridal gifts, can be collected. And Shalchasiv Lames Merubin. Let's say he sent her a lot of big ones, right? Sheyichzurima lebeis baila. I'm giving to you now. These are pots and pans. So these pots and pans are not for your use now. They're for when we get married.
Similarly, that if he after the kiddushin, he has to give a
Right. So those gifts. So now this is the source. This is right. This is the main right. Right. This is the main Gemara, is it? Right. Yeah. I don't know. Only ever wrote.
Amen.
So it says over there, he stipulates that she go back with her. These can be collected in court, right? If she doesn't return them, and they don't end up getting married. However, smaller ones, smaller stuff that should be used while she's still living in her father's house before he's suspected, and then the shidduch is over, the marriage is over, and the conclusion is over, then those cannot be collected in court. Fine. It says if he ate a dinar's word that his father's house, if a pachas medina low, but if it's less than a dinar, then he's not it's not enough simcha for him to be meichel for whatever amount of gifts he gives. One says pshita dinar tonight. It says the word dinar. So Maus Mojo said pachas medina, maybe even less than a dinar, any amount. If I tiktani dinar, and why did it say dinar? Maybe that was more natural, right? It wasn't natural to eat a pruta's worth. It was natural to eat a dinar's worth. So kamash v'lad that bedafka dinar, but not less. So achol tanan, it says if he ate. What about shasa mai? Let's say he went there for a drink, or hutanan, right? He went hutanan shluchomai. Let's say his future father-in-law feeds his shliach, his messenger, or sham. It says over there tanan. So shigarlo, let's say you sent to him. What's halacha in these cases? Does the person basically, is it considered to be reciprocated that he's now meichel, even though that it's not, it was much more expensive, his gifts, or not?
It's specific response. If he just comes and invites him for dinner a few times a week, while they're engaged in.
Yeah, being invited over for dinner would be that. Doesn't just have to be, yeah. So Tashma, come and listen. Da'amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel Ma'is b'yodam echad sh'shigei lebeis chamav mea kronas shakad yain. He said, right, 100 like the flask, barrels of wine, v'shakad shemen, and of oil, v'shakli kasef and silver, v'shakli zav and gold, v'shakli milas and also clothing. V'racha, he sent huge gifts. V'racha v'simchaso, and he went happy. V'holach v'yaman al pesach beis chamav, and he got to the door. V'haitziu kaish shachamen. They brought him out a cup. Here, he sit on the porch. Didn't invite him in. V'shasa, and he drank. Umeis, and he died. And this was basically halacha that they brought this case. What to do now? Is it considered like he went inside? He only drank outside. He didn't go inside. Didn't eat inside. What's going on here? Is it considered to be reciprocated? Oh yeah, no. Yeah, it was not for the drink. They tested the drink, but yes.
Oh, what did they give?
Yeah, it is a bit suspicious. Right, good point.
Right.
Yeah. So literally, so he passed them before the Chami taught Lusha in Usha. But he says, "Sivloinas hasuyas libalos." If it's gifts that are made to go ahead and perish, right? Then such as, let's say it's food, right? Food are perishables. Let's say it's food. So that those are not collected. The food is meant, to not to be returned. However, but let's say it was pots and pans and stuff like that. Then those could be collected. So in this case, what do you see over here? That you see that not even going inside, right, is considered to be. Is considered included. And Shmami Nafilu Trasa. All right.
Significant say he died. What if it doesn't make it he died inside? The marriage is called off.
Well, that was the case. That the marriage was called because that was a case of sending gifts. It was sort of reciprocated, and the wedding was called off because he died. Right. Right. So, I mean, other than that, I mean, the case wouldn't have come unless, it didn't, right? So it would have been different had, right, he broke it up. We'll see whether he breaks it off or, so those cases. Let's see.
I'm ready for it.
So that we said by Kesef Kedushin. So Kesef Kedushin she keeps, but these are the gifts, the bridal gifts, those do not have to be returned. What do they do in this case?
Why does this prove that drinking is enough? Because he did get to take everything back because it wasn't perishable.
I'm sorry?
He did get to take back everything that wasn't perishable. So why did this?
Wait, no, he didn't take anything back. Right. So he went there, he died, right? So afterwards, the Beis Din ruled, right? So Beis Din ruled that things that were supposed to, even though they were perishable, they could have still existed, right? There still could have been meat in the fridge. Those don't have to go back because when those were given, right, he gave it with a full heart. Now, when you give meat with a full heart, you expect the meat to be eaten. When you give the pots and pans with a full heart, you expect those to be brought to the to the wedding. So as long as it's reciprocated. So once it's reciprocated, and this qualifies by him drinking qualifies in this case as a reciprocation. And therefore, all the halachas would apply to the ratio of the Mishnah.
So she does get to keep everything.
Right.
I thought the way saying was saying here is that she
Where?
doesn't get.
What's that?
What does that mean? Or again, I thought that was meaning that he.
So those things, right? No, those v'sheina silivalos nigvin. Those can be collected because those are meant for the marriage.
Right. So the drinking didn't.
No, but it would have been the perishables. Those other the foods and other stuff would have come back. In other words, those are those.
That's not really enough proof because wasn't expecting those to come back because they were perishable.
So we'll soon see. We'll soon see in a case. We're soon going to see in a case of where even the perishables back, and they have to even give back the food and all that. In other words, because there wasn't something done from the woman's side, right? So therefore, it's now not. It's almost like a loan, and therefore you can go ahead and collect it back. All right, we'll soon see. We're going to get to your points. So shmamina filu shasa shmamina. So also can we learn over here shmamina filu pachas dinar. Well, also we see pachas dinar. He drank something. So Ravashi saman le malan de lo shaki be le marganisa de shavia alpha zuzet ashke. Right. In other words, you hear about these like gold flaked steaks and stuff like that. So over here they crush some pearl into this cup. So you drink, Coca-Cola with crushed, pearls in it, and it was a very expensive cup. So who says it was below dinar, right? Right. That would have been right. That's what Lego's talking about.
You wouldn't have bothered mentioning that in the
The what?
in the
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
but maybe there was a sign of the times. They would show their wealth at a special occasion with doing that. The gold flakes in the alcohol, right? Goldschlagers, right? So shmamina afilu shigralo. So you see over here, maybe also let's learn from here that even if it's sent, he wasn't invited into the house; they sent it out to him. So Gemara says no. Maybe like being on the porch, being outside by the doorway is tantamount to being in the house. So what about the shevach? Right. So let's say he gave animals to her, right? And the animals gave birth. So if the items are returned, so do we say that the babies have to go back or not? So out. Right. So Maushi Shalish, one case.
If you didn't get a dinner's worth of
So-
enough from the father, right? That's the only time you return it. Otherwise, if you did eat a meal at the house,
Unless he stipulated that these are not for your to be used in the father's house, right? They would be used, right? We say it, right? Right, that was part of the condition, right? So over here, so let's say he gives a partial, right? So my shisha, so let's say he was given a half a dinar's worth of half a dinar of food, right? So maybe half of the stuff was never reciprocated, and that stuff for sure comes back, and the other stuff is not. Right? Or what about the shevach? Or what about any sort of profit? Let's say the animal gives birth. So Shevach Shavuos Mao. So came on the east now Ladidu Ladide, since let's say they're in his possession, let's say he gave her cows and they're in possession in Haji, so B'Shusei Shavuach. Right now, as they would have, the baby, he would have the babies. Like Dilba came in the Avdi Aminavi, or maybe Shavuach. Or maybe we say that, let's say that since they were lost souls, she just in the place those, right? So therefore, the Shevach is by her. So the Gemara answer is Teku. Does not give a teretz as to whether or not the Shevach has to go back to him or not. And by Rabba, Siblonis Aswinli Balos. Let's say the case of these Siblonis, they're supposed to go bad, and they didn't even know they didn't expire yet, right? They weren't used up yet. So Toshma, come on, listen. So this is another halacha that Rabbi Yacha Sarabi said for the Chamin Busha. The Yama Sivloinus Hasuli Valois, those, as we said before, those that are made to go ahead and perish, right? A nigline. So those were meant to be used up and were not expected ever to return. However, but those that are not meant to be used up, those were meant for her to bring into the marriage, right? And therefore, so those are nikvin. Those are returned. So my lab afagav deloy balu. So this is not their return, even though, in other words, that you get to keep them, the perishable ones, even though they didn't perish yet, right? It was a day after the kedushin, he sent it, and then it was broken up a day later, right? Of course, the bolo may return in a case they're no longer there. That's why they're not collectible. So Tashma, come and listen. Sivlonis muatin, so small sivlonis. Shetishamesh bahen, right? That she used them. Vihiva beis chavia, and she's in her father's house. Ein nigvan, right? Those are not collected. So you see over here that that small stuff, that these things, right? Those are not collected. So our answer is Tirgama Rava V'Yava V'Siv Kasa, right? These things are very, very cheap, like little covers or doilies or hairnets and stuff. On top, they were really very cheap, and therefore, even those cases that even if they were perishable or they were small, they were never expected to come back. But something that's perishable that perhaps has value, maybe that's still expected to come back. It's not a proof. And Amrav Yudah Marav, Maisbed Amecha, Shishtiga Lebeis Kamav, Yayin Chadash, B'Shem Chadash, B'Kli Pishan Chadash, Be'atzeres. So a person sent fresh wine and fresh oil, new oil, and Kli Pishan, new clothing, new garments that were just made during Atzeres, during the Shavuos time. So that was the Maisa. So my Kamashlan, what did he come and teach us? So Yiboy Sema. I'm sorry?
Doesn't very nice, but doesn't say anything.
Right. So the Gemara says, Mike Mashmalon, what's it come to teach us? Really, this has nothing to do with these cases, the halakha in this case. Rather, it's just saying the Shevach Eretz Yisrael, that there's already wines and oils so early in the season. Or Kamashmalon, but you see that Eretz Yisrael already has his produce at that point.
Right. Tubishvat, for instance.
Or Kamashmalon, you can say Tani, or maybe let's say the guy comes and has a claim. I sent her this. There's no such thing as new oil in Shavuos time. So Kamashmalon, that such a taina is believable because it is possible. And so they said, your wife, by the way, she can't go ahead and smell. She says, Tobit. Right. The Niklas Acharea, Lechurva, Lebaitka. So he says, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and take her into a churva, into a ruins, in order to go ahead and check her sense of smell. Samarla. So he told her, Reach Tznon Ani Mariach Begalil. He says, oh, I can smell the scent of a radish in the Galil. So Amrele. So she said, basically, she saw that he was trying to go ahead and test her. So she played along with it. And she says, oh, who's going to give us dates to go ahead and eat along? Because those go well with this radishes from the Galil. And Nafla Allah Churva, then basically she fell in the ruins of Mesa and she died. So Amru, Chacham says, since he only brought her in there to basically go ahead and test her, because really he wasn't going to go ahead and marry her. Therefore, Mesa, if she dies, Eino Yarsha. He does not go ahead and inherit her. So this is brought.
It's already I think they're already
Right. So in this case, normally it would, right? But in this case, since the Baal already showed intentions, right, that that he brought her in there. I'm just reading from Rashi. He wanted to go ahead and test her and to divorce her in such a way he doesn't inherit her, because normally even the to be yarshin, the kedushin is takana, right? So therefore, such a case, the man is not going to takana in such a case. And now let's see what's the ending of what we said before. So Yosef, Rabin, Saba, Kamid, Rav Papa, Yosef, Kamar, Bein Shemei Sehi, whether she dies, or Bein Shemei Su, or he dies, or Hadar Hu, or he is Chayzer. In other words, all these cases of where it's not a case of she says no, right? So Sivloina is Hadri. All these the Sivlonos, those go ahead and they are returned. Now, assuming that he didn't say these are for your father's house for you guys to go ahead and eat there. However, right, or stuff to be used in the father's house. Michael Mishta loy hadar, but food does not get returned. Perishables do not get; those items do not get returned. Right, those do not get returned. And Hadra ba'ihi, and let's say she is chayzeres, and Hadra afilu bisha diraka, even amounts of vegetables, everything gets returned, all the food. If she says, no thanks, and let's say this food was eaten, so thanks for the marriage, but now I want the food back. And I'm Yeshua v'shamin lo lahen demei basar bezul. Right, we go ahead and we evaluate it by for cheap food. In other words, because the time they ate it, they really had no idea the family was here. They had no idea that she was going to go ahead and say, you know what, I'm not marrying you, and therefore the food they're eating has to go back. So they said, we wouldn't have eaten filet mignon. So therefore, they can go back and give a cheaper food at that amount, cheaper side, kama bezul, atilsa, up to a third less. A third less. That would be, I guess that's the discounted rate of cheap food. Fine. Next Mishnah. Now is the Mishnah. Actually, we've seen a lot of this next Mishnah. So Shchimira Shekasav Kol Nechasav Le'achem. A person is dying, he's on his deathbed, and he writes all of his assets to somebody else, not somebody who's going to, let's say, go ahead and inherit him, or different than what the inheritance would be. V'shari Karkin Kolshu, and he leaves a small amount for himself. Matanaso Kayem. Such a case, right? The matana works even if he gets better. Certainly, right, if he dies, right? Because mazal shchimera. But let's say he gets better. So you gave most of it away. However, because why he kept some? Why did he keep some? It must be that he figures he's going to survive, or else he wouldn't keep. So if he kept some, he knows to survive. He knows to survive. So when you survive, you can't say, I wouldn't have given the gift, because you kept some because you anticipated surviving with disease or getting better. However, loy shayar karka kolshu, if he gave everything away, did not leave himself anything, ein matanasa kayemus. Then his gift is not considered to be good, because why? Why else would he give out everything away? It must be that he did not anticipate ever recovering from this refuah. And when he gets better all of a sudden, so therefore his matana was not a good matana, there was no kinyan done, and therefore it would not. But in the other case, right, even though he's matash shchimera and he got better, there still would have to be a kinyan done. If there was a kinyan done, then that would work. So let's see the Gemara. Saman Tana, Deazlidan Basar Umdara. Who is the Tana who goes after we do an assessment, right? We do an assessment as what was the person's rationale? What was the reason why? What was his thought process of why he did what he did? Right? That's what Mishnah seems to say, right? Because you can see the guy gives something away, or guy gives everything away. So everything must be we're bringing into his blame. They were assuming that he didn't think he was going to get better. That's why he gave everything away. But if he keeps some, it must be he's thinking straight. He thinks he's going to survive. That's why he's keeping some. So who is the Tana? Some Rav Nachman, Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe. It's Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe. As we've seen this earlier, the title in the Brisa, a person's son went to Midian Yasayam, Beno, and then someone came back and related the information that his son died. The Amad, he got up at Kasav and he wrote, Kol Nechasav Liacher. All of my Nechasim, because I don't have a son anymore, will go to somebody else, my neighbor. His son comes back from Medina Siyam and says, Dad, there was a rumor. Matanasa matana. The matana is a good matana. You gave it away, you wrote it. Right? No, it's not a good matana. Had he known that his son was alive the whole time, he wouldn't have written it by the facts of the case. So therefore, our Mishnah is the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh, who basically, from the from the circumstances, we could see what his what his thought process was. And Rav Shimon Shazuri, it's actually Rav Shimon Shazuri, the title in the Brayso of Rishon Hayom in the beginning. He say Hayetze v'Keilar, the Yamar guy's getting out to be to the gallows. The Yamar, and he says going out Kisvu Gatli. He doesn't want his wife to become an almana, all right. So does he fall to Yibum or whatever it is? So he says, write a get liishti for my wife. Right? And then
The downside of this is she can't marry Cohen. But she could marry.
right. So he says go over there, and then so in such a case, so we say that right. In other words, even though he didn't say right, he didn't say what's it called, write it and deliver it. Nevertheless, he just says we go ahead and get it. They said the person's going off for a long voyage, we do such a thing. Even a person who's very sick, right? He's very sick. Nevertheless, that he says that we go ahead and we give the get, even though he never said to give it. So according to here, you see, so he said, give a get to my wife. He write a get to my wife. So we anticipate that he thinks he's going to die, and therefore we go ahead and we write it and we deliver it. And Rav Nachman, my time alone,
It's a forced rate that. So when he goes to
when it gets delivered to the wife.
She gets it. It's not like, well, if I die, it will be done a minute before I see him. You see that sometimes.
Right. No. Right. That'll be a problem with mamzeros. Right. And all that. Right. No, if she does, then he comes back. They don't know. And Rav Nach, the only time that was by the Melchamos, right? We see the right. If I don't return for more, right, in the beginning of Subas, then you right. So he said, so why Rav Nachman, my time alone, Rav Shimon Shazuri. Why don't you establish like Rav Shimon Shazuri, this last case? The Shani Hasan Dalmar Kispu. He wrote, he didn't say, write my give my he didn't just say he's divorcing his wife. He wrote, write it, right? She said, write, since he said write it, so that's more of an instruction, right? We know the intentions were to write it because you said write it, as opposed to our case, he never said, right, write it, right? So therefore he didn't say write it, he was just using Matas Shkimra, so therefore it's a different case. Rasheshas, my time alone, I'm looking like Shimon Manasseh, but I didn't say Shimon Manasseh. So the Muchach Shani. That over there was he was given the information about his son. Immediately afterwards, he said, all my assets are given away. So obviously, that case was muchach. But this case, it wasn't muchach. What was his intentions? Perhaps he meant to give away everything, even when, even if he got better, he says, I don't need all this stuff anymore. So therefore, we don't know. It's not muchach. Therefore, you can't say necessarily Shimon Manasseh. And we'll stop here today. We'll continue tomorrow. Everyone have a wonderful day. And